Oh, it's time for Bringing In Troops, little Zoom from Quarantine Show Mondays with Tom. There's Tom Haberstroh. Um, David Thorpe is sort of here. We're having a little Wi-Fi. You can't see David. That's okay. He's going to join us audio only. Also, Judy just made fresh bread. It looks delicious. It was going to be a great day, but now like everything's going to hell. Maybe we can't screen share. We'll just hang in there. We're going to bring it in. Tom and I are here. Tom, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Henry. How are you?
Good. All right. So you watched the All-Star game. And you saw trends. You saw like a sign of things happening in the NBA. Tell me about this.
Yeah, so I came up with this theory a few years ago, and it actually has been happening, which is the NBA All-Star game is just kind of like all the trends that are happening in the NBA or how the players want to play in one game. So before NBA teams were taking threes all the time, the players at All-Star game were taking tons of threes and just shattering records. And then lots of dunks were happening. And then suddenly the NBA started trending in this way of just teams were taking pull-up transition threes and making these big men play like point guards, like Nikola Jokic and Giannis. And a lot of these guys who in years past, you never would think like, oh yeah, that guy can be the point guard for our team. Now that's happening. I don't know if All-Star is like where this lab, all these ideas are being conceived. But I think it's notable that last night, the coolest part of the game was watching Steph and Dame take half-court threes. And I really think that that is going to be the trend going forward is deeper and deeper threes, not just because it's cool to watch, but also because teams are so hell-bent on getting a hand up and guarding the three-point line. Inevitably, Steph and Dames of the world are going to have to pull up for an open three-pointer earlier. And they can hit that shot. Like they can hit that shot reliably. Maybe not every player, but I think in the next few years, you're going to see a lot more of that and a lot more of Giannis going 16 for 16 on just basically a bunch of dunks.
Poor David. David's like in the chat. I have an opinion on Tom's idea.
Well,
David.
I'm not at all going to rain on what Tom's saying. I'm just going to add to it. Let's be clear. That wasn't a game. That was an exhibition, okay, or friendly, as they say in Europe. And as long as no one plays defense, who knows what we're going to see going forward. And if indeed Tom's right, that this game gives us a glimpse in the future, then there won't be defense in the future. Because
there already isn't.
Defense.
Well, wait. But David, there's a thing here, which is real, right? Which is Shaquille O'Neal going to the All-Star game has in his mind, he wants to be set free to do the things that he enjoys doing, which are things he doesn't practice, right? Which is he wants to play point guard, right? It's not a random thing that he wants to do, right? Steph and Dame know what they want to do. We've talked about on this show for a year where Dame said on some Zoom that he's like going to shoot from half court in a regular game. Like this is going to happen, right? Like the thing that he chose to do is the thing that he kind of knows he can do, right? Because he practices it and he freaking won a game with it. It was like.
I never had a doubt that's how the game would end unless Curry made that previous one. As soon as he missed, I thought, okay, Dame's next. I don't know if it'd be the very next possession, but I'm just saying I watched all of Giannis's points today, and it's embarrassing. It's why I turned the game off after 90 seconds yesterday. They're just not trying at all. At least there was some skill in what Dame and Curry were doing, because even not being guarded, it's not easy to make those shots. What Giannis did is a joke.
That's I'll tell you one takeaway I had was, and if you are a hardcore Nuggets fan, tell me otherwise. But I'm like, oh my gosh, the Nikola Jokic we're used to seeing is like 40% as happy as he can be. like Jokic can get super joyous. Like I didn't know that. He was so happy to play with Giannis and stuff. It was weird.
It was also alarming to me see how much fun Giannis has when he has amazing passers giving him the ball. Like imagine if LaMelo or Steph or Chris Paul, if Chris Paul played with Giannis, I'm sure he would get at least 5 more points per game just because so much more inventive and innovative as getting him the ball where he's by the hoop. But, he wants to take those 3-pointers. He's right now the most worst high volume 3-point shooter outside of Charles Barkley. So he banked in a 3-pointer at one point. And it was just like, two. Yeah. And I'm just like, hey, it's his night. But he did say after the game, one thing that I thought was notable, I think The Athletic covered this, is how much fun he was having. And he just, he assumed that the All-Star game was about showing everybody how good you are. And like, I really deserve to be here. And I'm going to show all these other all-stars how good I am, right? Maybe those feelings that Zion was having last night going into the game. And then he said a few years ago, he just like realized like Steph Curry is having so much fun out here. That's what this is about. And he kept saying, I had so much fun and I just let my guard down. I just wanted to have fun out there. And it just occurred to me that like, this is why all those Steph Curry wanting Giannis to be traded to the Warriors, like that stuff I think is real because of how much joy, how much fun it is to play with Steph and Curry. Like, look how much fun everyone had. And notably, LeBron was sitting on the bench for most of this, just cheering on those guys. And I just think playing with Steph is, it's electric.
Did you see what Steph was doing when LeBron was doing his powder thing?
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
Steph, like, you know, he's like, I'm here to make it more fun for you, right? Like, that's a real thing.
Well, this is something we've talked about too, is that to me, joy is a talent when you can play with it, right? When you bring it every day. It's a big part when I was coaching a long time ago that I try to bring joy with it, all the discipline and toughness that I had. And the players that brought it, I valued so much. They changed. I used to always say, you can't have a bad practice with certain guys in the gym. And there's such value in that. And I don't think it's drafted nearly as much as it should be. If two players are pretty close, they'll take the guy that jumps a little higher, runs a little faster. Give me the joyful one every damn time.
So, but David, like, I was thinking about that exact point you've been making on the show for a long time, but like Damian Lillard hits the most fun shot in the most fun game of the year, and he can barely bring himself, like only after like a minute of like doing daytime, he's just such an assassin. He's such a serious man. He broke a little smile, and that's how he is. Like, this is, you know, celebrate that man. He's incredible, but he is not good at this joy thing. And it struck me that when Anthony Simons like did, you know, some pretty crazy dunks, like,
yes,
the commentators are like, he needs some showmanship. I'm like, I think Dame ruined him. Like Anthony Simons, you just do your thing, and then it's like
all business,
stone, walk off. like there's no carnival, like whatsoever.
But Dame was rooting for him at least. I mean, not that we're surprised. We've talked on the show that Dame really likes him. I think you quoted him a year ago saying this guy is the future or whatever. Like, yeah, you could tell. But I thought it was interesting. They were all talking to Zach LaVine. I haven't watched a dunk contest. I watched last night just because I wanted to see what they were doing in the bubble. And I've not watched this like Larry Nance. Like, it goes a long way for me. I'm not even kidding. In terms of live. And they kept on talking to Zach LaVine. Is he won slam dunk contest? Like, is he the expert? Yeah. He is an amazing dunker. But he was like the guru. It was funny to watch.
Yeah.
He is very athletic. And what did Kenny Smith had a funny comment in the dunk contest. Said, I don't remember whose dunk it was, but he said, man, you can't get a 50 when you do something like that in warm-ups. That was a great line.
Yeah, well, Zach LaVine did that in warm-ups like a few days ago before the competition, and then Obi Toppin just did the dunk. And it was like, man, if Zach LaVine didn't do that in warm-ups the other day, is Obi doing that dunk? I thought the dunk contest was good. It was a lot of fun. I actually like having young and up-and-coming players in that dunk contest because this is kind of their dream, right? If you have Giannis or LeBron or whoever it is in the dunk contest, I think it's just, I don't know, it doesn't feel as innovative. It doesn't feel as fun because it kind of feels like this is, grunt work for them. But for like guys who literally have not dunked in the NBA because they're so new and so young and rookies and two-way players, that was really cool. And a little more emotion from Anthony Simons, please, or Cassius Stanley. Like, get a little bit, have more fun.
I'm gonna tell you something. I've watched Cassius Stanley probably every game he played in the bubble in the G League.
He can fly,
but I don't know that I ever remember seeing him dunk the ball in a game in the G League. I'm sure he did, but never once did I think, ooh. Like, when I watch Anthony Simons, I can't help but be impressed when I watch him play, whether he dunks the ball or not. His legs are just incredible. And I did think that almost kissing the rim. I'm glad he didn't, because he could have gotten hurt. Like, in slow motion, it looked like you control it. No, but he's going fast when you rise up. So I was glad he didn't do that. But I do have an idea based on what Tom just said. I was thinking about this about young guys, because I think the All-Star game is actually bad for the game. I can't stand watching for many reasons, but
that's detectable in your tone.
Of course, but give me a game of rookies or even rookie sophomores but you can do it with just rookies who haven't played above a certain amount during the season for whatever reason, normally because they're on good teams, and let them play a G League All-Star game. So G League All-Stars, any age, versus the rookies, like think about last year. They haven't passed a certain minute, because if they have, we shouldn't be risking any more games. That will be a competitive as fuck game and lots of talented players. And you'd also see the difference between rookies who are super talented and not so famous guys in the G League who are 25, 26. It'd be a very, very competitive game. There's a reason why the G League Ignite are now being run by Amir Johnson and Jared Jack to make the playoffs. Like, those guys know how to play, the young guys don't. That would be a competitive game at least. Guys would guard people. We didn't see any guarding last night, any of the quarters that I saw.
I think to fans, that's a feature, David.
I guess.
I mean, I got to see Chris Paul dunk an alley-oop, which was, I mean, I didn't know he could still do that. Like, there were things that happened in that game that made me rethink players' ceilings or how they're utilized. Because to Henry's point earlier, a lot of the players that we see in these All-Star games are revealing like hidden talents or things that they can do, but are not allowed to do or not enabled by their coaches or systems or what have you to do. And watching Steph Curry catch an alley-oop from Chris Paul was like, that was pretty special, because it showed me that like there are other layers that Chris Paul and Steph Curry can do that maybe we haven't unlocked yet. And not to say that Steph Curry needs to be Giannis out there, but I did kind of feel like, wow, he's so much younger, springier than I ever thought he would be at this age. So I think the All-Star game is for the fans. Obviously, LeBron was like checked out. He played 12 minutes, shot, 3 shots or whatever it was. He had this like crazy dunk in the first like couple minutes of the game where it was like he looked like he was 22, and it was fun. It's for the fans, obviously, the product. There was a lot of controversy heading into the game about Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid and their barber haircut that they got from a barber who had tested positive for coronavirus, and they weren't allowed to play. And I don't know, there was so much stress for me going into that game about, oh man, COVID protocols, and is this the right thing? And the optics of the whole situation. And then the game started being played, and it was kind of cool to see all these guys having a blast out there.
It was. I was doing a little bit of like, Adam Silver said like that the economics were part of it, but not all of it, and blah blah blah. And I'm glad that they, were so on top of it that they caught this exposure and prevented other players exposed. Like, that's good. But man, think about how much money this was really important to the NBA. Every player on their own private jet, like, and taking over an entire hotel. And all of this tests and 1,500 people getting whatever. I was like, they spent a fortune. I mean, every player on their own private jet. Like, can someone tell us how much that costs? Like, it's got to be just that has to be approaching, the TV revenue. Like, just so much.
I'm wondering, how are they going to get people back? I know this. The few players I've spoken to, the league paid for them to go from their last game into wherever they wanted to go. In the case of the guys I talked to, they weren't going far to like go visit family members, mom, dad, whatever, after the last game last week. But now they got to get to where they're going next, which is all going to their home city to practice a couple of days. Are they quarantining? Has this been announced? Is it a 2-day quarantine? You got to pass 3 negative tests like you had to do before. Do you know what we're doing? Because these guys they're not gonna all charter a private jet. The league's not gonna pay for everyone to take a private jet, from New England to Texas if a player is going to San Antonio, Houston, or Dallas, whatever. Do we know what they're doing on that?
I don't know. Why is it different than going home on a given day?
Well, at least
here's Gerard has the answer. Only one practice, and you need to have a series of negative tests.
Okay, yeah. The negative test makes some sense, but you got to do like 3. That's what I thought. Like 3 in 12 or 24 hours, and they'll let you back in the facility. And so the players just have to be careful they don't get exposed before they go back to their team.
All right, Tom, give us even though this was a blowout, give us a little love affair with the Elam ending.
I love Elam Ending. I love it. It's the spirit of the game where if you play pickup and you play to a certain score rather than having a timer out, it eliminates so much the icky stuff that happens at the end of games that have people just like bored to tears watching the game, which is like, you don't have all these replay events to figure out how much time is on the clock at the end of games when you pause or blow a whistle. You don't have to do all those things, and you always end a game on a made shot like a Damian Lillard pull up from the parking lot 3-pointer. I love Elam Ending. I think Daryl Morey a few years ago said he predicted in a few years from now, which is around about this time, that the Elam Ending would be adopted full time in the NBA. FIBA's starting to do it. The basketball tournament's starting to do it. I think it's great for the NBA. I think in the next 5 years, the NBA will start implementing it more, whether it's in the preseason or whether it's in, I don't know, just only November games. But the idea of shooting to a score at the end of a game rather than having these just outrageously long endings to the game, I think it's great. I think it's a really good idea for the sport. And I love last night. No one would be watching the end of that game if it weren't for Elam Ending. And it was pretty fun to watch Damian Lillard just being like, I'm going to end this game right now. Boom, 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 boom. Game over.
Like he has that skill. And without the Elam Ending, he would have just dribbled out the clock. Right. And then said, like, I mean, I try to watch how my kids watch basketball, which is not very much, but like that moment, my son was like, whoa, rewind it. Like, you know, he just wanted to see because of the Elam Ending, right? It wouldn't have mattered otherwise.
There's got to have to be some real research into it. But I will say this: I like the idea of, like in high school, they have a mercy rule. They just started implementing a couple years ago, which I love. When you're up 30 points after halftime, the clock never stops again except for the end of the third quarter. So the game's over very fast. So that way teams can't score 100 points and win, 150-12, whatever. I really think in the NBA, if you're up 25 after 3, we're going Elam Ending, however the formula would work, because the chance of your team winning are, less than 1% anyway, or whatever the number will be, 25, 30, whatever. And then we get everyone home faster. But the challenge, I think, Tom, is how are referees going to call games when every time they blow their whistle is 2 points towards the ending and there's no change of possession for that. I wonder if referees are going to be a little less likely to call fouls they did the first 3 quarters once the Elam Ending kicks in.
Good points, but I think
you have to study it.
Right, but I think also like a 6-point game is a perfect way to have Elam Ending, not just 25 points, because 6-point game or a 4-point game or a 5-point game, the team is just fouling and elongating and it's just free throws. No one wants to watch those free throws. Whereas if it was a 5-point game and it was, hey, we have an Elam Ending where we're all trying to get to 123, whatever it is, you're not fouling just to get the ball back. It's just a matter of how many points can we get on this possession. And that's the true spirit of the game, is just trying to get to that, to beat your opponent to a score. So I think it should be implemented. There's certainly ways to study it more. But I'll tell you one thing, the current situation, the status quo is not optimal either.
For sure.
We need to figure that out too.
But you can't compare it to a pickup game because they don't shoot fouls in pickup games and they don't have referees in pickup games, right? So that's the area I'm concerned about, is our officials going to call. Now, you're not wrong with anything you said, 5 or 6 points. Yeah, the 25-point game, I'm happy to get it over as fast as possible. I was rooting for Damian to make the shot because I just put it on. But I don't know if officials, if it's a 6-point game and a team is 4 points away from winning it in the Elam Ending, is he going to call that same foul for 3 free throws? And when it's close, and he normally would do it, I don't know. I want it to be studied.
Would that be different than now? Like I feel like now already we have like giant referee concerns every time the game's on the line.
But not for that reason. You're not, I don't think they're as worried about it. We can talk to referees about this. With 3 minutes to play, they're going to call that foul. They may not call sometimes with a few seconds left. We think that. But in 3 minutes to play, I don't think that. I've never felt like a ref was worried about the score when there's 3 minutes to go. In the final seconds, for sure, which is why I'm bringing this up. Because all of this is final seconds when you're talking about a couple of possessions can end the game because of the Elam Ending.
But I think so crunch time is the most exciting thing that can happen in the sport. But it's a terrible television product now because there's so much commercial time and dead balls and video reviews.
We can change that too.
But to me, like what you're saying, David, to me is like the referees will be in the crosshairs, but like that's 100% a byproduct of there are important moments of basketball, right? If they're playing basketball with a game on the line, the referees could decide everything, right? But to me, like we're gonna have to accept that because we require life or death basketball. We require like moment after moment that chooses everything, right? Otherwise, it's a bad TV product. So to me, like, yeah, the referees might suck at it, and it might take 5 years for them to adjust, but still better than like, the other thing that's been discussed is like in Europe, they basically don't have the ball doesn't stop in the last few minutes. It's very hard to get a timeout. Like
you have to have the ball, and it's got to be a dead ball to call timeout.
Right.
So yeah, I watch a lot of European games. It's much
so
faster.
like we did some years ago, I wrote about this, but like the last 2 minutes of a EuroLeague game, of a close EuroLeague game, take like a tenth of the time of an NBA game.
Yeah,
That's not science. It's not that number, but it's a tiny fraction, which makes it unbelievably exciting to watch, right? And we just need that. We need it to be more exciting. And to me, Elam is like, I don't know that there's anywhere it's been tried where people didn't like it, right?
No, and I think just the idea of every single game is going to be decided by a winning bucket, like
or free throw.
Right, but that happens already.
Yeah.
And it just feels like there's going to be tense and drama and intrigue at the end of every single game, which you cannot say about the NBA now.
Well, and now I'm thinking about it like, okay, another thing that we're suggesting in this show is that people will shoot 40 footers, like not just in random moments. So like, okay, if people can make 40 footers and go with me in this ideal world, they make the court way wider. Like this version of the game where the game is going to be 40 footers coming from all directions. Like this is a very watchable product. like young people who aren't tuning into basketball games, I think have a chance of tuning into this one because there's going to be crazy alley-oops. Like how do you stop Giannis when his teammates are 40 feet away, like activated? Anyway, I just feel like there's opportunity. The skill level of the players is sufficient to support a way more interesting game. I'm like, why not?
I'm not ready to be as flippant about 40 footers as you are. Damian Lillard and Steph Curry are Mozart. They're incredibly rare people, and I don't know that we appreciate them as much. I do because I see the gym all the time. What Damian did is fucking hard, like crazy hard to do. They're guys shoot half-court shots every day of their lives in the gym. They almost never don't go in a gym and not shoot. I mean, go in a gym and not shoot a half-court shot. He wasn't quite on half-court. There's just not a lot of guys that can do it and make them. They can take them. Making it's a challenge. So I don't want to forget that. You're not wrong. With the games that keep getting wider, more and more space, but that is just not something we're going to see.
I mean, TBD, right? Like we're only now getting the players who grew up watching Steph, right? Like
I'm just saying, I practice it all the time. We work on 40 footers routinely as part of our teaching.
We don't first of all, everybody would have said we were going to have never any players in the regular season shooting from half court, and we have it. Like now we have coming as the generation of high school players who've shattered every high school shooting record ever, right? Like there are kids who are in middle school watching Steph who are going to come to the NBA, and they're going to, more of them is shooting way more. You know more about this than I do, but like the likelihood that some chunk of them can shoot 40 footers seems to me pretty high, right? Now that are watching this game, right? And on top of that, like they don't have to be 40 footers. But like right now, what's the corner?
30,
22 feet in the corner. Is that what it is? So that's absurd, right? Like we have players stepping out of bounds all the time. Like there have been a bunch of game-winning threes where the player lands out of bounds. Like let that motherfucker go back there, right? Like he can play back there. He can play really well back there. So like, is it 25? Is it 30? Is it 35? I don't know, but like it seems crazy to me. Like we definitely could use the space. Like, and once the defense has to come all the way out there, then we're getting the game that fans want to see, which is going to be alley-oop dunks and people. Mike D'Antoni said the whole point of his offense was to get more layups, right? Like you're going to get more layups, you're going to get more incredible stuff, and something happened when Damian pulled up from there. Like part of your brain is like, oh, audacity, right? Like that's a good feeling. That's an Instagrammable feeling, right? That's something the league, I think, in its difficult financial state, can afford to ignore.
Totally. And then like when I wrote about the Utah Jazz taking these transition 3-pointers, it was not just a strategy. I think also it made the game more exciting. Is instead of having these possessions that are just pass, just drain the shot clock to 24, it's you have to pay attention at every moment of watching a Utah Jazz game because something cool is about to happen or could about to happen.
Yeah.
Could just like Joe Ingles pulling up in transition. Usually you just kind of like zone out. Oh, they're going to get into their set and they're going to pass here. And here's the flex offense. And all right. Now I'm going to wait around. And there's the shot with 3 seconds in the shot. Now I have to watch every moment because something cool might happen.
When who was the defender? Like you used a play where a defender did like the most innocent little half step, like away from Jordan Clarkson maybe, and it's just
it was Terrence Mann, I think. Yeah. It was like he just
regular. But no, he's gonna pay for that. Like
yeah. So I just think it's cool. You want everyone to be just glued into your TV sets and watching every moment because something cool might happen. And I think when you have players who are not just enabled to take those shots for years, decades, coaches would bench your ass if you took a transition 3-pointer. And now you have so many more capable 3-point shooters. And you watch LaMelo Ball do this and like sit your ass down, rookie, like get out of here. No, like he can hit that every once in a while. And it might not be 100%, but if he in 3 years is hitting that with regularity because he knew that James Borrego in year 1 was okay with that shot, and I'm going to practice that and become better about it. I think that's powerful. And the LaMelo Ball is coming in, having watched Steph Curry do this and win championships. The next generation of kids is going to be like, not only did Steph do it, but LaMelo Ball is doing it. And hey, Zion Williamson isn't taking 3-pointers and he's still dominating the game. So it's not going to be every player, but it's just, I think, going to be adding more skill to the game because people think like, oh, this is bad for the game that they're taking deep 3-pointers. That's skill. Like putting a ball through the basket 30 feet away or 40 feet away is really fucking hard to do. And it takes hours, like Coach, you're saying, it takes hours and hours in the gym to perfect it or even get to the level of being able to be used in a game. And even then, with a lot of practice, you still can't be as good as those guys.
Right. Yeah. That's the whole point is, again, it's part of our curriculum is taking really deep shots because if you can even reach the rim with your regular shooting motion, it means you've created a nice, fluid, powerful stroke. Most guys can't even do it. They have to change their form, which is never good. The one caution I would say regarding adding space to the court is we'll be legislating Steph Curry and Damian Lillard out of the league. And it'll be just more and more guys that look like Giannis and can shoot like Curry and Lillard. And I don't want that. I want small guys to have a place in the game. And so I just something I think about all the time.
Explain it more, David.
So think about it. You've got to play defense. You would already right now rather have 5 Giannis's than 5 Curry. So that's already a given. But at least because of the right, at least because of the dimensions of the court now, there is still an ability to some degree of the smaller guys to be able to guard that much space. That's why quickness and speed do matter. Length does matter. It'll matter even more if the court's that much bigger. And I don't want to legislate out and only have people who look like they could be on Space Jam play. I want to make sure the smallest of players can dream big to a degree. There's been one Muggsy Bogues ever. I don't think there's ever going to be a second one. And that's great. Muggsy is a real unique player in his own right. But just something I think about is I use sports as a tool to reach young people on more important life lessons. I don't want that tool to be so narrow that I can't really reach as many kids in theory as I would otherwise.
But David, so you have Steph Curry on your team.
Yeah.
And the court is much wider than it is now. You're not going to play Steph Curry?
No. What I'm saying, Henry, is in 15, 20 years, if that's what the game is, and we have a lot more 6'7" long LaMelo Balls that can shoot it about the same as Curry, not quite as good, but close enough, yeah, you're going to go with the taller, longer guy. They already do.
But here's the thing, though, right? Like, I forget the numbers, but there's something like 10,000 times as many people who are 6 feet tall as 6'7". So right. They're always going to be way better shooters, right? Like just by sheer numbers, right? There's just, to me, like you're going to have, like it's true right now. Just look at the numbers, right? Like your super tall guys, like some of them can manage, to shoot the threes well, but if you just take all the best shooters, like a lot of them are Steph size.
Wait, so I'm trying to think of this. So, Coach, if you shrink the court, would Steph become better?
No, I'm saying if you shrink it to where the game is now, then and took away, for example, the 3-point, if you only count everything as a 2, Yeah, Steph Curry wouldn't play in the game.
No, but Tom's trying to ask you, like, what's the opposite of your point? Like,
So, right, like, so like if you shrink the court,
Take
I
away
think
the
Stephen Curry
three-point shot.
becomes
The
almost
opposite is take
obsolete.
away, the opposite is take away the 3-point shot.
no. So, David, you're saying that Steph would become less valuable with a wider.
As more tall guys learn to shoot like Steph becomes less valuable because of the amount of space that has to be covered.
Oh, I hear that. Like, it's gonna be so much harder to guard Giannis if you have to guard like a pick and roll from 40 feet away. Like that is crazy to think about. Yeah. But I also think like Steph Curry is so much better than the rest of the NBA at making 30-footers.
Yes, the true unicorns will always be okay. But there's just, as few well, obviously that's why they're called unicorns. So I like the corner. The corner is interesting because you made a point, Henry. I love the point you made. I see this all the time of guys stepping out of bounds. It's hard. First of all, they have size 16 sneaker. There's not a lot of room there, right? And if they take what we call a negative step before they shoot it, they step out of bounds.
Happens every game.
Yeah. Well, the veterans tend to do it a lot less than younger players. Or you'll see, here's what's interesting. A guy that didn't used to be able to make the corner three. So he's 26 years old, but he's not been a corner three guy. But he develops a corner three. All of a sudden, you'll look at his turnovers. He'll start getting corner three out of bounds because he's never run there before. Whereas the veterans know exactly how not to take that negative step or not run out of bounds to begin with. Sometimes these young guys just run out of bounds. Like literally as if they don't even see the line there because they're just not used to it. So I like that dynamic aspect of it. But I understand why we should move out the 3-point line from the top. I'm not saying we should do it or not do it. I'm just saying I understand why it's a very makeable shot for these guys growing up who get their form fluid at a young age.
Well, this is like a hard on your brain. So people who are like, oh, we should make 3-pointers harder. We should move the line further out because right now the game favors 3-point shooters too much. And you can okay, I see how that would work. But I'm here to tell you that if you move it out another yard, let's say, Giannis is never making another three. And Steph is fine with it, right? Like, I actually think it might become more of a specialist shot.
Yeah. It won't affect these players. It'll affect their children. Yeah, it takes a while for all this adjustment to happen. And I think Tom's point on Zion, that's never going to change either to D'Antoni's rule. Right. You can space the floor. Those beasts of athletes who he's a freight train in a real game, not last night. Yeah. In a real game, Giannis and Zion are and LeBron. So when you watch Giannis and Zion, this is me anyway, all I could think of is, oh my God, this is LeBron his whole life. Bigger, stronger, faster, and more skilled than all of them. And he's a better passer than both those guys, by the way. That's why LeBron is who he is, among anything else. Unguardable in those situations going downhill, and he can do a bunch of other things too.
I think while we're on the topic of innovating the 3-point line, I think the argument should be moving in the 3-point line and adding a 4-point shot.
Oh, I'm all in.
Because 3-pointers, if you move back the 3-point line, the mid-range game is going to be even more dead zone. Like, who's going to take a 28-footer 2-point shot anymore if you move the 3-point line back? So basically, you're going to incentivize players from taking 3-pointers, and then there's going to be like a huge zone of the basketball court, which no one is going to operate in, right? So I think you move the 3-point line back to like the college 3-point line, and then the 4-point line from way back there, and that way you're incentivizing valuable shots from all around the court rather than just 40 feet and like 4 feet is what my brain goes to.
And with your, Elam Ending, like people are going to now you're going to basically put people in a situation of like, who on your team can take this half court shot, right? Like, cause we require it. This is what we're going to need now. Cause we're, 4 points from, they're 1 point away. We're 4 points away. Someone's going to have to shoot that. Like,
what do you guys think of this too? I know there's some leagues in Europe that keep track of quarters.
Yeah.
And add, you get a point, whatever. What if we did that also? So there was more drama in each quarter potentially, where a coach would have to run a better play, put his starters back in or whatever. When it's close, you can't just always try to win every quarter. Guys deserve their rest, but you might put in the stars with a minute to go in a tie game, first, second, or third quarter. That might add some, because again, to your point, Henry's been preaching this for 10 years. We have to be doing something for the fans. And don't forget my point of view, which is we want to get as many young people to fall in love with the sport as humanly possible. so that they both play it and or watch it or both, then everyone wins. So that would add to it as well.
So correct me if I'm wrong, Coach, you bring up something that I've thought about a lot is, I think in other sports leagues, you get points in the standings for if you win the quarters. And in the CBA, the Continental Basketball Association, they used to do it this way, which is
exactly right.
Every quarter, you got an extra point in the standings. And so every quarter felt like it meant something.
That's right.
And so I think in other sports leagues, they do this too. But I think that's a great idea for the NBA to think about, is making mini games in the court by the quarters.
Yeah.
How does it work? Like, my worry would be, like, do they just never play their like rookies anymore? You know what I mean? Like, I
do. No, but you have to, it's a fair concern, Henry. The dumb teams won't nearly as much. You're not wrong. The smart teams will really still think about biggest picture. And it's funny. I was listening to, you guys have both been so good covering the importance of rest, right, in the NBA, going back a long ways now. I was listening to Roger Daltrey talk recently, the lead singer of The Who, and he was literally talking about how insane it might be to think that you should ever do a concert 2 nights in a row. Like, no, we would never do that. We would always, he acted as if everyone in music knows you don't do 2 concerts in a row. You always build in rest, right? And I just laughed at the idea that, well, how are we not figuring this out for our athletes if everyone in music knows? And so the smarter teams will continue to recognize that, hey, there's a balance we have to follow, but we have to make sure we rest our stars too.
Well, I think LeBron, when he is resting a game, I think we need to rebrand it as recovery. I feel like we're having a bad PR program in the NBA where when LeBron rests, it's being considered, or the connotation is that he's lazy and that he just doesn't want to play. But I think we should probably think about branding it as like recovery, or something that associates, there's something wounded that needs to be taken care of, right? Yeah. And the lead singer of The Who is saying, my vocal cords would not work, or I wouldn't have the same energy. I'm wounded and I need to recover. And if the NBA was like, hey, these are the NBA recovery protocols that LeBron James is allowed to recover from his workloads or his sore back on a back-to-back, like, I think people would have a different relationship or think about those rest days differently. So
this is how players talk, Tom. You're exactly right. When you talk to a player, what's up? I'll say, what's your plan today? Oh, today's a recovery day, coach. And I don't even have to ask what that means. I know what it means. Yeah, they're mostly resting. They might do something active for the recovery, but they're recovering. You're exactly right.
The commissioner said that players won't have to get immunized to play in the NBA, which is good news, because several players have said they aren't sure they would like to get immunized. What's your take?
Tell me more about that. I was surprised to see the document. When they asked the question, denied the answer, what happened?
Okay, so the NBA, from what I gather, the NBA has been following the CDC protocols on vaccinations, and basically, like, we'll take the lead from the CDC. And a few months ago, players in negotiations with the league, from what I'm told, were like, hey, a lot more of us would be okay with getting a vaccine if we were incentivized by having more freedom, and that we wouldn't be trapped in our hotel rooms on the road, and we'd be able to go out to restaurants, and we'd be able to, like, have a life again if we were vaccinated. And the NBA at the time, following the CDC protocols, were like, yeah, at this point, like, no, we're not going to let you go do stuff more just because you've been vaccinated. There's not enough evidence to show that you can't transmit the virus if you've been vaccinated, and you still might be a super spreader if you've been vaccinated. Now, the CDC has changed its tune and has said, like, we should loosen up the quarantine protocols for those who've been vaccinated compared to those who have not. And now the NBA is putting it on the table with the players and saying, hey, if you get vaccinated, then Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons might be able to play last night, because the CDC is recommending we should be looser with those quarantine rules if you've been vaccinated. And the problem is, this is not being communicated to the players, because last night, Jared Dudley is going on Twitter and saying, wait, no, as far as I know, you can still transmit the virus and you can still get sick if you've been vaccinated. And the point is, yes, it's still possible, but it's incredibly unlikely if you've been vaccinated, according to what I know. Henry, coach, you can correct me here if I'm wrong. But the point is that players have a lot of reasons why they might not be totally open to getting vaccinated. LeBron James was asked about it. Donovan Mitchell was asked about it. James Harden was asked about it before the All-Star game. And all three of them said, yeah, this is a family matter. I'm not going to talk about it. Right. So they sidestepped the question of whether they're going to be vaccinated or open to being vaccinated if they were able to. And they just let that question go. They were not going to address that. And it's created a lot of discussion about why. Like, why is LeBron James not being more vocal about getting a vaccination when you see Kareem doing it for the NBA? You see Greg Popovich doing it. And given the same opportunity to be out in front of this and being in so many ways he's done this for social issues, civil issues, health issues. LeBron James being like, look, I'm not answering that question. It's a private, personal matter. And I find that interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, there's something going on. There's a lot going on there, right? All right, let's address this. Okay, in the chat, people are talking about 3 points for a dunk. Here's my thing. Maybe, all right, but okay, it's going to be problematic though, right? No, first of all, we used to have a game where dunks and long shots were worth the same, right? That was the NBA 40 years ago, right? And what they did was they packed the paint, offense and defense, right? Like the whole game was too boring to watch, and then basically the D'Antoni revolution has taught us that every part of the game, to me, is the things that fans like seeing happen more when there's less defense in the paint. Right, this is more dunks. You know, there were the most dunky player in the NBA right now is Rudy Gobert because, as Tom explained to us, all the rest of his teammates shoot threes. Like this is how you get more dunks, right? Is to get the people who would the help defense out of the paint. So to me, this is where like if you made a dunk worth 3 points, it's not that I don't love dunks. I love dunks. Don't you get me wrong.
You'll see a lot less of them.
But you would get a lot less of them because then it would make so much sense for that defender to be hanging out there just grabbing Rudy Gobert every time he's trying to dunk.
I also wonder if there'd be more injuries because players would be incentivized to get more dunks, which would mean you probably are going to be reaching for a dunk more when you probably shouldn't be. And there'd be a lot more collisions because players are like, no, we can't let that 3 points happen. And I'm going to do everything I can to stop that dunk from happening. And probably just bad stuff would happen from that.
I'm also worried about somebody has to rule, was that a dunk or not? And like so many dunks are actually a half inch short of the rim, right? You don't actually touch the rim. I don't know who's going to rule on that. Like that's going to be tedious.
Like what if Anthony Simons came like really close to kissing the rim and we'd have to go to the videotape and be like, did he kiss? Did his lips make contact with the iron? I am not sure. Let's go to the replay. That would be every night in the NBA if the dunk was worth 3 points.
Just give him
by the way, I really like the emphasis. I've watched dunks, and I've watched too many dunks just in my regular practices to ever be impressed with much of anything. But I like his creativity on his first and third one, where he took them on a little nerve thing. I actually texted my son about it, and then coming close to kissing the rim. I thought that was pretty cool. Obi Toppin's first dunk, as someone who's watched an awful lot of dunks in his life, like that was pretty damn violent. He reminded me of Ted Kenyon Martin, which I remembered then is who he actually does remind me of when I saw him play in college. And I wrote about on True. Like he is one freakish athlete, quick and fast. My goodness.
Oh, he flew. I was like, that's a very big man who's like shooting through the air. Like you just don't see that.
But Simons is just breathtaking as an athlete, isn't he?
Let me tell you a little story. Last night, my wife was watching the All-Star stuff with me, and in the warm-ups, like Steph Curry walks out and stands next to, I think it was Jokic, like in the introductions. And as he's walking past Rudy Gobert, she goes, "Oh my God, look how tall that guy is." And I'm like, "Yeah." And then she goes, "Oh my God, look how short Steph Curry is." I'm like, "No, he's like 6'3". And she's like, "What?" I'm like, yeah, he's taller than just about any person you see on a regular basis. Like Steph Curry is tall. Remember Ray Allen, the first time I saw Ray Allen, I thought I was having like hallucinations. I thought I just like dropped acid because of how tall he was. I was like, no, Ray Allen is not that tall. And he's like 6'4". Steph Curry's really tall by all human standards, except when he stands next to Nikola Jokic.
NBA reporter sees tall man, only possible explanation, LSD.
Well, welcome to my life. My life in pictures. That's why you don't see many pictures of me with my players. They just look too damn short. My parents gave birth to me at 6 feet tall for a damn reason. I'm just tiny compared to these guys. They're 6'5" is little.
There's a certain thing that happens with this muscle right here where I'm like been holding a microphone interviewing a 7-footer, right? Like, heaven forbid it drags on, right? Like I remember standing in the lobby of the Four Seasons in Philadelphia interviewing what was his name? Sean
Williams?
Tom Bradley?
Tom Bradley. Tom Bradley turns out nice guy, chatty. Like I thought we were gonna talk for a minute, but I ended up literally like for half an hour, and I'm like, oh my god, I just
stop talking, please. My arm's gonna fall.
I need a boom mic.
I think I told this story maybe on the show, but I went to college with a guy named Dwayne Shinsis who died a couple years ago.
Yeah,
pretty famous.
Great mullet.
Yeah. He was a freshman when I was a senior. We hung out a lot because their team manager was one of my lifelong best friends. And Dwayne once came over to my house, and after he needed to use the shower, so he showered up in my bedroom upstairs. And I went back up there to check on him, and he was I swear to you, this is true. He was blowing his hair dry in the vent on the roof of the room. We had the AC blasting because we're Florida. That's how he was, and he had big hair. We called him the lobster for that reason. That is a true story. And then one Saturday afternoon, I heard a knock on our apartment door. I walk outside. I open the door. I look at the peephole, and all I see is someone's chest.
Yeah.
And I knew.
Oh man.
Oh, Dwayne Shinsis broke Thorpe's mic. That's terrible.
Terrible.
David, are you there, David?
Henry,
I knew for whatever reason I knew it wasn't Dwayne, but it was really weird. I opened up.
Oh no.
Did I break all you guys?
I think there we go. Okay, we're gonna. David, I don't know if you believe in a higher power, but say a little prayer and see if we can get the Wi-Fi gods working for you. Tom, let's bring in Gerard and let's completely pivot if we can. And let's talk about we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of Adam Silver shutting down the league. There's Gerard. And now there's getting a little bit of the New York Times has a look back, and we talk about Adam Silver's getting his crown as like the world's greatest COVID champion. What's your take?
My take on Adam Silver shutting the league down.
Oh, he's just okay. Nothing but pure laughter from Gerard.
Well, there was a New York Times story today that did like a year in review or a look back at the nights of March 8th, 9th, and 10th and 11th, right before the NBA shut down. And Henry, you put me onto this story, and the NBA's account, or Adam Silver's account of what happened was, lots of crazy things happened. And he made the decision to, once Rudy Gobert tested positive, he got on the phone with his lawyers at the NBA, and they made a determination that we need to shut all this down. But also, I think there was lots of stuff that happened before then that if the NBA was acting out of an abundance of caution, that would never have gotten to that point. The NBA is being championed for shutting down the NBA season when everyone was like, whoa, this must be serious. When, I don't know, there was a tennis tournament that got shut down. There was also South by Southwest that got shut down. There was all sorts of huge events happening around.
Them stopped touring days before. Yeah.
And even a few days before that, I was working for NBC Sports, NBC Sports regional networks, so I'd be on the air for a Warriors game. The Warriors broadcast their games on NBC. So I'd be like on there, and they'd be like, so before we talk about the game tonight, just want to let you know that the game is going on. The Saturday game with the 76ers is going on, despite the San Francisco City is saying, hey, this game should not be going on. And there are literal signs on the building of Chase Center saying, hey, if you've had these symptoms, please don't enter. And if you do enter and you get sick, please do not sue us, essentially. That all was happening days before, not hours before or a day before, days before March 11th happened. So the NBA was monitoring the situation and decided, despite the local governments campaigning to shut these things down. In at least the San Francisco case, the Warriors, one of the biggest high-profile teams, the NBA was like, yeah, let's keep those games going, and let's keep the fans in the building.
Look,
There's sorry, Gerard, we didn't bring you in just to have you laugh, I promise. But Donnie Strack is like the VP of health for the Thunder. Exactly what the sequence of events is, I don't know, but I know that the referees had the ball and were about to throw it up to start the game. Rudy Gobert was known to be symptomatic, so symptomatic they left him at the hotel. So what was the course of events again, where a Thunder official has to come sprinting onto the court and break the news to the referees that they should stop the game? Like, when was Adam Silver on his phone saying we're shutting it down, right? I don't understand. Like, how did Donnie Strack beat Adam Silver to shutting down the game? Like it just seems like, I really feel like, honestly, not that I want to stick it to the league, but like, they should not revise history so that Donnie Strack doesn't get credit here. Because like in real time, the players were like, fucking Donnie, man, great guy, saved our lives. Like, but in the retrospect, it's like, no, like the NBA just had it under control. I'm like, I am unconvinced. And the Pelicans game was still going to go on. As you pointed
I was going to say, yeah.
Like they did not. I don't know. Anyway, go ahead, John.
No. I just look. We love the NBA and love basketball. So I don't want to like be on here all the time, like railing and killing the league as like, I just, damn it, Henry, this true thing. You always get people telling truths out here. This is a real problem. You got to be honest about things, and it's annoying as fuck. But the reality is the NBA, and I said this before, gets a ton of credit for a lot of things, oftentimes because when you compare them to the closest thing, which is the NFL, they always look better because the NFL is a disaster. Like, they're a disaster show always. And so the NBA often gets that like nice bump up in the ratings because, oh, they're not as bad as these people. But in truth, they're actually probably just as bad, because at the end of the day, it's about the dollars and cents. These are money-making entities that are for profit. We are not here for the love. We are here for the money. And so anything that is stopping the money-making enterprise, that is a problem. We're going to delay that as much as possible. No doubt, Adam probably had smart doctors and scientists on the phone. Then he also had his bosses on the other line being like, I don't care what them fools say. We're playing this game tonight. Well, what's Adam going to do? Listen to the doctors and scientists? Hell no. I got to do what my bosses tell me to do. I'm going to get fired. Like, that's just how this game works. And it's unfortunate that the balance in between are people's lives, right? This is what you're deciding in between.
Keep a great point about Major League Baseball or NFL. Like, those sports were not happening during this pandemic start, right? So we're giving credit to the NBA, but I always think about what would that look like if the NFL and Major League Baseball were happening at the same time? Like, would the NBA be thought of as the progressive leader on that front? Maybe NFL is like, whatever, we're going to play through whatever it takes to get these games on, right? Probably. But also there was that, but there also was the benefit of they were the only sports league happening at that time, major sports league happening at that time. So, and the Pelicans Kings game I wrote about because it was such an interesting example of it was Zion on national television and he was hurt all year.
That game.
Also, this was the only Kings game on national television the entire year. Okay. And the NBA had decided we're going to suspend the season after tonight's games are played, not now. So they could play the Pelicans Kings game. And Gerard, the Pelicans players were like, no, we're not playing this game. There's a referee that was officiating the Utah Jazz 2 days before, and the players would not come out of the locker room. And they're like, we're not playing this game. And then the NBA decided, if Pelicans aren't going to play this game, we should probably cancel ahead of time. So that is the course of events that happened. It was not the NBA said, all these games, we're shutting them down right now. Right.
See, Tom, shouts to the proletariat, because if you want to actually do things, right? Labor strike. We're not going to play. Then they have to shut it down. The labor says they're not going out there. See? Powers and unions and labor, people, just to bring this back to an anti-capitalist rant.
And there's so here's the thing from the New York Times. Adam Silver. I had just left the office and our general counsel called me. I was on my way home and he called and said that we've just gotten this positive test of Rudy Gobert of the Utah Jazz. I didn't say in that sentence, shut everything down. I wanted to hear what the recommendation was of the Oklahoma State Health Commissioner. I also spoke to Sam Presti, the Thunder president, and Clay Bennett, the Thunder owner, in the next 10 minutes because we all knew the players were taking the floor for the game in Oklahoma City. So to me, like, this is technically true. I'm sure what he says here, right? But it's the only time we visit, like, a year later, how the NBA came to be shut down, and it's just the Adam Silver show. I'm like, those Pelicans players, that Thunder official, like, that's what happened, right? Like, he got nudged and towed and pushed, and like, the mayor of San Francisco, all of these forces pushed, and eventually he made the best decision, right? Yay! But like, it wasn't really emanating from him. I don't feel like, only later.
All of this stuff is so interesting. I do want to circle back to something you guys said earlier about the vaccine and all the players sort of like answering differently, and like, and Waz had brought this point up. Look, it is the line of thinking that players are the ones who need to be responsible for telling people you take the vaccine is problematic, right? Like, you've got Jared Dudley out here saying the FDA isn't. I'm like, that's just wrong, bro. Like, what do you mean? Like, you can't just roll out to the store with drugs. Like, that's not how that works. Like, things get on shelves because they get approval, not because someone just decides, oh, whatever. So that's number one. Number two, look, I don't fault LeBron or James or any of the. First of all, this is a health issue we're talking about here. I'm not getting out and telling you my personal health and medical business. Like, that's not a thing. I get what Adam's doing, and he's like, all right, we got to have Kareem and all these guys do it because then it'll make everybody take the vaccine. The messaging about this needs to come and be done differently from actual voices that carry medical weight, and not so much, well, NBA players are doing it, so we should do it, right? Like, this to me is problematic. And, we see what happens when, you try to make the idea that athletes can do more than they can. Do they have powerful platforms and voices? 100%. But the people who need to take the vaccine, and again, this is Waz's example, Waz stumped for Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election. Hillary Clinton did not win the state of Ohio, right? Like, do you think that, like, right? And that's where LeBron, in theory, has his most influence, his home state, right? Like, these things are not always direct congruence, right? They don't always flow in the same line and in the same direction. So I think great on the league for putting out PSAs, and yeah, sure, do your part, but let's not make it like, well, if LeBron doesn't come out and say it, it's not going to happen. Like, that's not.
No, well,
we gotta
okay, I hear you. I think nobody's obliged to represent any position they don't believe in, right? Fine. Like, it's a fucking problem that the idea the vaccine might kill you is popular, right? Like, so it's not, to me, that isn't to say that LeBron shouldn't have that position, but allowing it to permeate is actually going to prove to be a health issue in the US, right? This is why Dr. Fauci made one of his first big interviews with Stephen Curry, because people who follow Steph are wanting to hear this science message, right? Like, I feel like Steph reaches people who are suspicious of their doctors, right? Like, and in a way that's like, okay, that's where this is a political campaign, right? Like, trying to earn trust. And like, to me, I take this, LeBron, Donovan Mitchell, James Harden, as like, the trust is low, right? Like, trust in Pfizer is low. Trust in FDA is low, right? Like, that's a giant problem. I'm not saying it's a problem with LeBron or James, but it's a problem.
What would you want LeBron or James Harden to say when asked this question?
I don't care, but I just feel like if we're doing a poll of like, where are we? I'd say we're not where we want to end up, because a lot of people are not believing in this. Same as like when, this is exactly the same to me as like, like everything Barack Obama said when he was president, half of America would be like, I doubt it, right? Like, I'm like, that's a trust problem. It is. Like, but to me, like, as long as we have that kind of trust problem, like, you do the poll and like, it's not, the results aren't good, right? We're not there. Whereas like, if we're going to end the pandemic with vaccines, we're probably going to need giant numbers of people to believe in it. And like, this would be a clue to me that we're going to fall short.
I think it would be, and it's not on, and we've talked about this before, Gerard, and you're 100% right here, that it shouldn't be on LeBron James to get the country vaccinated, right? It shouldn't be on Donovan Mitchell, right? It shouldn't be on them. The onus should not be on them. I think when white people have this conversation and hear LeBron James and Donovan Mitchell and James Harden having, sidestepping that question, I think the next step in that is explaining to white people who Henrietta Lacks is.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And Tuskegee, Like those are conversations that I think LeBron James, Donovan Mitchell, and James Harden, not that they're obligated to mention those things, but those are things that people need to hear.
Yeah.
And hopefully the discussion goes
are
there.
we even sure that their answers are because they're fearful of it? Like, what's the actual reason? Like, and are they obligated to tell us what the reason is? You know, like maybe it's just they're gonna do it, but they don't feel like talking about it. I don't know. Like,
and we gotta go. That's that's the end. I'm sorry. It says we can't piss off Judy. That's just how it goes. All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you on Wednesday. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, David, if you're still here.